Hey everyone, Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Matt W for the virtual gift voucher. Sorry for the slow thank you here mates, I'm a bit behind in checking the emails, but now I have seen it, I greatly appreciate it, thank you. But on to today. Today, another installment of our What If Primarch Return series, as we talk one of my absolute favourite Primarchs, Jaghatai Khan. General spoiler warning to begin, as we will be discussing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So Jaghatai Khan. Honestly, if it wasn't for Russ, there's a good chance I'd be a loyal follower of the Kargan. There's many Primarchs I love, but there's just something about the White Scars. I've said it a million times and I'll say it again. Chris Raitt crafted an absolute masterpiece in Jaghatai and his Legion. There's been some pretty amazing stories throughout the Heresy series, but from beginning to end, I'm not sure there's been a story as consistently brilliant throughout like Jaghatai's. From doubted traitor to steadfast loyalist, this guy's just an absolute beast. Now, as we know, Jaghatai was one of the few loyal Primarchs to be present on Terra during the siege, alongside his brothers Rogel and Sanguinius, and it was the Khan himself who led the daring assault that recaptured the Lion's Gate spaceport. After the siege and the proclamation of Guilliman as Lord Commander, Jaghatai is said to have agreed with his implementation of the Codex Astartes, something that may be a little surprising to some fans of the Kargan. However, I can easily see Jaghatai looking to the chapters as merely different tribes, all of which remaining loyal sons of Chogoris. And really, Jaghatai at times can be very matter-of-fact. If they appointed Guilliman as Lord Commander, then they have to abide by what he decrees, whether they like it personally or not. And so as it was, Jaghatai continued to lead his newly formed chapter, and it was during this time that the Kargan in pursuit of Dark Eldar disappeared within the Eldari webway, never to be seen again. So that leads us to our question today. What if Jaghatai Khan were to be the next loyalist Primarch to return? How could it happen? How would he react? And just what would he do? While we may not have had any teases specifically on Jaghatai, we do at least know he is lost within the webway, and we have had a bit of a step forwards in this, in regards to the White Scars entering into the webway to find him. While the webway is nothing short of a galaxy-spanning maze, it's at least a step within the right direction. So in asking how could he return, well, the most logical scenario is him actually being found by his sons. Now, it's not likely Jaghatai has simply been wandering around the webway lost all this time, as well that's not exactly an exciting predicament. The fact is, the passage of time through the webway is about as unpredictable as the warp, and there are countless sections of it where time has almost stood still, or where moments are replayed over and over again, where the beings trapped within are locked within the same moment of battle. And I think this is the most likely predicament for Jaghatai to be in, still battling the same Dark Eldar he was pursuing. So when found by his modern day sons, to Jaghatai it will feel like barely a few moments have transpired. As with all Primarchs, he would be confused by these differently armoured and sized sons, but I'm sure he'd no doubt spot a true son of Chogoris. where no doubt an epic quest to escape the webway would ensue, with eventually Jaghatai returning to the current Imperium as we know it. Now, the White Scars situation isn't actually one of the best. Their own homeworld of Chagoris has suffered invasion within recent years, led by the infamous Red Corsairs warband, and despite eventually seeing it off, as far as we're aware, they have still yet to cleanse the rest of their sector. And not only that, current chapter master Jubal Khan was taken prisoner. Despite his rescue, his wounds were too grievous even for an Astartes to heal, and he has since been forced to lead the chapter from his life support machinery. So any return of Jaghatai would find him immediately having his hands full, and honestly I think he'd be absolutely incensed at the mere notion of Chagoris having suffered invasion. He would not be pleased, to say the least. Having obviously been given the full rundown of history from what databanks the White Scars have and word of mouth from his sons, I believe Jaghatai would waste no time in launching his campaign to reclaim the Yasan sector. He wouldn't be wasting time in trips to Terra or trying to see Rabute. The immediate concern would be the people of the Imperium and the safety of Chagoris. Now, I'm not saying this in the sense of the brothers having a bad relationship. While I don't think they had a close one by any stretch of the imagination, I certainly don't think they were on bad terms either. Jaghatai simply would focus on the practical matter at hand. And well, he had a bit of an estranged relationship with most of his brothers anyway. While the bond between those who remained loyal may have been unspokenly strengthened, there's still not a great deal Guilliman and the Khan could have in common. So I don't feel he'd have a desire to see Rabute strong enough to override the immediate concerns. He would absolutely send word to Guilliman and Terra of his return, and depending on the circumstances, I could see Guilliman coming to the Yasan sector if he is able. While it may have only been a few days or weeks to Jaghatai, to Guilliman it's been far longer since he awoke. Far longer he has felt the weight of the Imperium's survival and felt alone. Whatever brother returns, he will want to see them, even ones he may not be particularly close to, such as Jaghatai. Now again, we know precious little about their specific relationship at this time, but we do know Jaghatai supports Guilliman's implementation of the Codex, and while perhaps not the closest of brothers, we could expect a fraternal reception between the two at least. And I don't foresee Jaghatai having any issues with Guilliman resuming his mantle of Lord Commander. And I think the same could be said for the revelation of the Primaris. The sons of Jaghatai, while being unique for want of a better expression, don't find themselves suffering from any real genetic deviances, such as the sons of Sanguinius or Russ. So I don't feel Jaghatai would see the Primaris as an excuse for Guilliman to try and cleanse their bloodline. And I also don't see him suffering from viewing them as a bit of a blasphemy as Dawn and Guilliman himself do. I think Jaghatai could actually be the most accepting of all the Primarchs to return. Well, maybe alongside Vulcan. Now, with all that said, I do think Jaghatai could be a little put off by the fact that the Yasan sector is still in a great deal of turmoil, while Guilliman himself has ensured that his beloved Ultramar was saved. I could definitely see him asking Guilliman if that was an action of the Lord Commander or instead the Ultramarines Primarch. It wouldn't be enough to brook a dispute between the two, but something I could definitely envisage Jaghatai noting, and something he'd definitely bring up if Guilliman attempted to ask him to focus on another part of the Imperium instead. The interesting question for Jaghatai is how he'd react to their father's ascension and the worship of the now God Emperor. Again, Jaghatai is a practical man. He understands why people look to things such as faith for something to place their hope in. He was, however, also a man who saw his father as just another warlord tyrant. Yes, he ultimately came around to the Emperor's intentions being the right ones, but that's not to say he'd be happy with this new situation. I think he'd be pretty aghast at everything he saw the Imperium has become. It's a very hard one to judge, but I'll side with I don't think, or at least see how, Jaghatai would think this is what his father wanted. He may not love his father, but he'll appreciate and understand his continued sacrifice. I mean, come on, it's a sacrifice no one can compare to. I was really hoping for just one more conversation between the two at the end, just to give us that little moment of understanding and bonding between the two. But given the events of Warhawk, it does seem pretty unlikely. Now, how would the possible impending revelation of the Unremembered Empire affect Jaghatai and Guilliman's relationship? Again, it's a bit of a hard one to judge, because we know so little of how Jaghatai truly views Guilliman. On the one hand, I think Jaghatai would look at it as not that much big of a deal, that it's just Guilliman's nature. Like I said, Jaghatai can be a very practical Primarch. On the other hand though, a bit like how we discussed with Rogel, as one of the Primarchs upon Terra during the siege, if Jaghatai thought this was a reason Guilliman didn't arrive in time, it could be a pretty big problem. All the sacrifices that were made, Sanguinius giving his life, one of the few brothers Jaghatai truly loved, the Emperor being interred upon the Golden Throne, his 10,000 years of suffering, and all the sons that were lost during the siege. Jaghatai has a temper, and he may well lose it. Ultimately, however, I'd side with the former, and Jaghatai viewing it as Guilliman being Guilliman. But it'd certainly be interesting to consider him thinking otherwise. So, with Jaghatai intent on cleansing the Yasan sector, and Guilliman I feel understanding that the Khan needs to be left to his own devices, this may be one of the easier, if not necessarily best Primarch returns for the Imperium. But as always guys, what do you think? What do you think would go down if Jaghatai were to return? How do you think he would react with the current state of the Imperium? And how do you think he would feel about the revelation of the Unremembered Empire? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.